Readings.
Sure. Extra.
I do.
Tracy.
We're live.
We're live. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna call to order the Thursday, January 9, 2025 MBTA Governance and Personnel Committee. We don't have too many action items and we need to do lots of discussion. So we have a quorum. And so I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the November 14th meeting.
Second. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's my motion. That's right. Motion made by, were you here?
I was here. I was here remote.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. We had a quorum in the room, so we must fine. Motion made by Chair Jefferson. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion seconded by Mayor Reed. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously for the people who are in the room. And now let's look at our committee schedule for this coming year. So if everyone will take a quick look at the committee schedule, which is item number 3. Some of that were said is necessary, that really depended on just exactly what's happening with the General Assembly. Whether or not they have any whether or not they sign any die at the end of the session, which I got a feeling they will not. It's got a feeling they will not. And what else happens to come up, which I have a feeling this year is going to be some stuff to be quite honest.
Yeah, so some of the key dates are, governor's amendments are due March 22nd at midnight and reconvene veto session is April 2nd. So
April 2nd, so it's really possible that the April 10th meeting may happen.
yeah,
But it does say if necessary, but does anyone have issues with the agenda as they see it? I'm sorry, the schedule as they see it.
There are no issues. I don't know if it's a big thing, but it says item 4, meeting schedule for calendar year 2024. I don't know if we're gonna put this on the count, publicly, but we need to change that to 2025.
We do that. That's just a typo.
It is a typo, but yeah,
Yes,
let's make sure we catch it. But
anything else? No August meeting?
yes.
All right, I make a motion to accept the calendar with that one type of change of 25 instead of 24. Is there a second?
second.
Motion made second by Mayor Reed. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passed unanimously. So 302 motion with 2 people who are not here today. All right, we will do the discussion on the General Assembly session as it is and as it's going to be.
As it is and it's gonna be. So a couple of deadlines were moved, not at the end, but at the beginning. So yesterday, again, I'm so confused about what day of the week it is. Yesterday, Wednesday, was going to be the last day they could pre-file a bill. They extended that to
Okay.
Monday, yes. So Monday at 10 a.m. will be pre-filed bills. The last day to submit bills totally is still January 17th. Normally tomorrow would be the last day that members could submit amendments to the governor's introduced budget. For the Senate, that is still true. The House moved theirs to Monday.
Okay. Did they how many bills can be filed in the House and the Senate?
So they did set limits this year in this short session, which is great. So in the House, it's 15, and in the Senate, it's 21. And that includes your bills that are pre-filed. So that is their cap on bills and resolutions.
And tell me one more time, the last day to file bills?
Will be January 17th, next Friday.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
And we should,
5 o'clock.
3 or 5, I can't remember which one. I put it in the 3 o'clock. And so we should see the members' budget amendments, what they're proposing. Well, the Senate ones, hopefully Tuesday, with the delay on the House ones, hopefully Wednesday or Thursday at the latest.
Okay. Is the House delayed because of the water issue or because of the late elections or?
No, mostly because of the water issue. And it's kind of interesting. The Senate kept the same date, and that was really the chair of the Finance Committee. The chair, Dorian Lucas, was going to give them, a few extra days, but they had to put them in hard copies. So hopefully that means that they can understand how the internal workings of how they actually post stuff. Hopefully it will go quicker and not have as much confusion. Part of it, I think, is also when they're online, you can add your name to an amendment online, and so they have to have it all in place, give it to them, and they can post. So we might get lucky and see everybody's amendments by the end of the day on Tuesday online. Right. They're wide ranging, which is great. So they're having meetings at 8 o'clock starting on Monday to try to make up. So Senate Courts is meeting at 8 a.m. Senate really has an 8 a.m. meeting. So they're gonna be double dipping on meetings next week to try to catch up, to make up the time. So,
They assume the water will be fine by next time.
well, they're really
We
hoping.
have a
to.
delegate.
Like a soul.
Because why not be here where the water is? Why not
So
be
they
here?
seem to be at the testing phase right now. I saw an article right before I came in. Mayor had a press conference at noon. Oh, Mayor, Dr. Danny Abu,
Oh my
remember him
gosh.
during the
Water
COVID?
and heat.
Yeah, he won. He's the mayor. Week 1.
Okay.
That's a good book.
Yeah.
This crisis, you can't have anyone better for this crisis.
Yeah, so they're in the testing phase and they continue in that phase, and idea is that hopefully Monday comes the way we all have working water that we can drink and shower and cook and laundry and
Okay, all right.
It
so.
was something.
That's the word we.
People are driving to the burbs to get a hotel room to shower.
Yeah, my sister did. She lives on Monument Avenue. They got a hotel room so she could shower. She was super cranky, 3 days in the shower.
Well, good thing it's the winter, not the summer.
True that.
True.
So at this point, there are only 2 bills that I want I will work with Ms. Bachman and Mr. Lungley to get this out to all the members directly. But 2 bills we really appreciate having folks comments on. First, I have an opinion, and I'll start with the one that directly impacts NVTA. In your packet is a copy of Senate Bill 1007 from Senator Surville. You all remember Senator Surville has wanted to have dedicated funding for bike and pedestrian projects not affiliated with a road improvement for standalone. And he's tried different things. He wanted to dedicate money from us, and we opposed that, and the bill did not move forward, and he understood that that wasn't going to work for us. So he has been talking about in a couple of different transit sessions, whether it's SJ 28 or a DMV moves, about taxing private parking spaces.
We can talk about that in DMV move.
Yeah.
But I do know, he did send me an email that expressed this.
Yeah, so he's talked about it a couple of different times and different, as I said, but in both of those studies, he's brought it up.
Fee.
It's a tax. I mean, it's a 50-cent tax per space
Per day,
per year. Just one,
per year.
yeah, and I have to say, I haven't had a chance because of all of this to sit down now that I have the final bill and sort of have him walk me through,
Okay,
but
and I don't quite understand how, so you're saying public parking spaces.
No, private.
parking spaces.
yes.
How does that, I mean, how would that work? How would he incentivize a private company, business organization to tax their people who are going to park in those spaces? How does
No,
that
the
work?
tax is on the space itself. So if you're a retailer and there are 100 parking spaces in your parking lot, you will get a tax bill for 50 cents times 100.
The retailer gets the bill.
Yes, not the people. So it's
Oh.
not like who uses the space.
The retailer gets the bill.
The space itself is the thing being taxed.
Or the property owner. So like.
The property owner.
So if combined properties owns a shopping center.
Right.
And there's X number of asphalt parking spaces.
Yes,
Then the combined properties would get a tax bill for 50 cents per space
correct,
on each of their properties.
correct.
Whether or not they're getting good business, whether or not spaces are being used, if there's a space there, it gets taxed.
If
Yes.
it is, a parking lot, because I'm looking at it now, it's off-street parking. So if it's a parking lot
Or a garage.
or garage, 50 cents a spot. That's what, okay.
Right. He has an exemption for parking related to a single family detached residence. And that's the only,
Well, that wouldn't be, yeah, well, that would make sense. How about things like nonprofits, hospitals?
not mentioned.
It's just silent on those things.
Yes.
So this is basically for retail?
No, oh, I mean, literally commercial,
So business.
any not,
So this building,
so this building, the apartment building across the street, the condo building down the road, the townhouse building right here.
okay. Okay.
As it reads now.
Does
So
he have any co-patrons?
not that I've seen that yet. Right now it's just him. I mean, it just literally dropped yesterday and it wasn't filed with any co-patrons. There's a lot of questions that people have asked, called me or called Ms. Bachman, like how much is this gonna raise? I have no
Does
idea.
this just apply to Northern Virginia? or
Yes,
just-
yes, every jurisdiction in Planning District 8, yes. And every jurisdiction that's a member of NVTA.
Madam Chair, if I could, a few years ago, when Senator Sturgill filed the bill to divert some revenues from the authority to have specifically for bike ped projects, his concern was there were a lot of bike ped facilities in Northern Virginia that needed either repair or they were disconnected. And so when his bill, I can't remember if he withdrew it or if it failed, I can't remember what happened to the bill. But the outcome of that was for VDOT to do an assessment on the region's bike ped network. VDOT conducted that work, and I think it came back with a price tag to make this seamless or connected bike ped network in the region about $1 billion.
Okay.
So wait, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, so I'm reading this. It is a 50 cents each parking space, but it seems like it's annual. So it's something,
Yes.
so it's just like, so if I, again, all right, so I just want to be clear.
Yes.
So privately owned, okay, so our public spaces, obviously, so this is interesting. Sorry, go on. Oh, no, I'm done.
Are there already taxes on parking spaces? It says, in addition to all other fees and taxes imposed. on-"
So that's real property, they'd be taxed. They would be subject to your all's real property tax rate.
Right.
Yeah.
Part of the assessed value.
Yeah, they're part of the assessed value of the
Yeah, but that,
property.
yeah.
I mean, not specifically as
Right.
an entity, but as part of the
Yeah.
assessed value for the parcel.
Is there a statewide or local parking space tax?
No, no.
Specifically, okay, so,
He's inventing something new.
so this,
You know, with what do
Excuse
for
me.
local governments when we are, first of all, I mean, who knows what's gonna happen to this, but what would happen is any new developments that come online are going to be underparked. Because developers are not going to put in more parking spaces into new developments. Now, truthfully, those of us who want to see more transit, want to see more garages and yada, yada, that's not the worst thing in the world. But this is how, okay, it's some water. Let me go find some water.
There's a
See if this
water bottle in the
rubbish-
refrigerator.
Behind you, that
I'm-
fridge.
Oh.
Lots of water here.
Yeah, right.
Mayor, do you have a question?
No, I was
Just
just,
doing some things.
well, my face is always doing. As soon as I did it, like,
Your face, forget it, just forget it.
basically the logic around the stormwater utility fee.
It's frozen. Sorry. It's not meant that.
Yeah.
Clearly, nobody wants me to drink water ever.
Water everywhere and not.
Gotcha, girl. Oh, okay.
These are not omens.
I don't want to go back to session. I think it's an omen.
You got a lot of water now.
Okay, what are you gonna say?
So the stormwater utility fee and that, like, you're taxing impervious surface to pay for something because water runoff, right? So you're trying to relate these things. And I think that's what he's trying to do here. Like, I know in my city, our parking requirements are too high in our urban little city for the number of cars that people are actually bringing to our
You think
city.
you're overparked?
I think we are requiring too much parking.
Yeah, that's what I
for new
mean.
developments. So by doing this sort of incentive and then this sort of carrot and stick thing, he's trying to say that we need to rethink parking. I mean, you're gonna-
Parking spaces you guys require for new developments? I know us was like.
it's all,
two
two
spaces per.
yeah, I mean, I don't know per residential unit or on retail, the square footage off the top of my head, but it always comes up is this thing, right? But our ordinance says it's this. But we built the Flacid University for all those students and the parking lot is not full. The students did not bring cars and Scout at the Circle and we required all this parking and the parking is not being used. And so by saying 50 cents per space on that, it helps these developers. I mean, I assume the developers are going to come in and say, look, you're requiring all this parking. We're looking at the fact that you're requiring too much parking.
Well, yeah.
And now we are being,
Yeah, you think
given this
yeah,
50
yeah,
cents.
yeah.
So in some ways, I don't have a problem with this. I think we have to do something and 50 cents, it's a low amount. He's looking at a small amount that's not super painful. Since parking space annually. But to me, the larger context is we need to rethink parking.
I think the things we think parking too. I don't think, I mean, you, with due respect, you have a fairly small city. If you 50 cents at, say, Tyson's Corner or Galleria Mall for space,
It's significant.
that could be significant. So I think it depends on where we're talking, what we're talking about. And I think he's going to get a lot of pushback from the business community, a lot of pushback from retailers, a lot of pushback even from the real estate community on this one. I get that he's trying something, and I have to appreciate that he's trying something.
Because we don't have the money to develop the alternatives we need.
Well, the other question is when, when MBTA does the 30% can always be used for bike and trail, to localities, but do you have some?
And so the NVTA rule, just as we haven't had a chance to read it, is that the localities would collect the fee, go to the state treasurer, would come back to NVTA. NVTA would have to establish a sub-fund specifically for these uses. They would need to set up a prioritization process like we have for the 70%. He names a few metrics that he wants to use in this bill, but then you all would determine that.
To the bills, more staff for MBTA?
No reference here.
But you all would have the responsibility of setting the prioritization process and programming this based on the applications you get for this specific type of program.
Monica, do you have, Mr. Longan, you guys have any thoughts about that?
It's difficult to assess what the revenue stream would be. Nobody has put out a number
We
on
haven't
it.
seen it.
I mean, it does exclude like the large parking garage on the other side of Gallows Road that's owned by WMATA or WMATA in Fairfax County.
Sure, yeah, that would.
Publicly owned EV garages. So, I mean, one of the questions is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? I think it's kind of a legitimate question. You can, if you have a 1,000 space garage or parking lot, the fee is going to be $500 a year. At 50 cents, but it does start a new revenue stream.
Right, I think, number one, it does provide a dedicated revenue stream, but something that we need to be cognizant of, a lot of these park and ride lots were funded or in full or a portion with federal funds. And when you have federal funds, you just can't take, any taxes on a structure that was used, that you funded with federal money.
Public parking spaces anyway?
But what the feds require, you can use it, but it has to be solely for that area or for that corridor.
But if it's a public facility, it wouldn't be taxed.
Part of that anyway.
Well,
Are there private facilities that are using federal funds? That's the question. That's what their question is.
Oh,
not a lot, but
There are a few.
I think that, yeah.
So I think there's a lot of questions that are going to come up as people read through this, and for you all also to think through your implementation of this tax, and what that means, because you're implementing it, it's not being implemented by the state.
And so we have to make sure that we have staff, because that's an issue in principle, and making sure we have adequate staff. Our next budget's gonna have more staffing requests.
That's why I
So
said.
make sure, we have the staff to collect the 500 here, 500 there,
So
here, 500 there, 500.
Money for MBTA staff.
Yeah, as I said, again, I think a lot of the questions are, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like, how much is this really?
and that's what, and I even talked to VDOT about that because they do provide opinions on certain bills. And the question for them is, well, how much does this generate? They asked me, I said, I do not know.
Let me ask you this too. So, okay, would this be ran through MBTA and not MBTC? Because MBTA does capital, so the assumption is we would, is the assumption we would receive the money and then we would put the money into building the bike paths? Because why through MBTA and versus MBTC?
Because
We cover the entire planning district 8, because MBTC doesn't cover.
Are we now getting into operations?
no, it's
No, this
capital.
would be
This is
capital.
capital projects. It would be,
So then how would we disperse the money out?
We would
Same
have
way
to
we do-
develop a process.
yeah, but similar to what you have for the
70%.
70%.
Yeah, we would mimic the
Okay.
same process we have.
Right.
It basically rides the coattails on the
Oh,
planning
that sounds
side as
god-awful.
well
Yeah.
as the reimbursement side of everything we do now.
Okay, but, okay. So you just think people who are specifically doing this, they going through this process just for bike and pet trails, so.
Yeah, so it'd be localities,
Yeah,
park
yeah,
authority,
yeah.
everybody else. Again, it's for,
Why wouldn't it make more sense to?
or safety improvements
Why
was the other
wouldn't it make
thing.
more sense
category.
to, and whether I like this or not, and I haven't why wouldn't it make more sense to collect the money and then just give a bigger percentage to each locality of their local funds to do what they want to with it?
For the connectivity, I mean, one thing that the authority is uniquely placed for is we do the transportation plan for the region. So it would.
Okay,
just as
connecting,
we do for
connecting
projects.
locality to locality is what you're saying.
Because sometimes we can see, even on the
That makes sense.
70% applications that come in, and we're like, well, this abuts, or this
Yeah,
could
yeah.
impact an application in a neighboring jurisdiction.
What committees does this go to?
This went to Senate Transportation, so we'll go there first for the policy discussion, and then I think it'll eventually end up in Senate Finance and Appropriations, because it's a tax.
Yeah.
So it'll start there, so Senator Boysko chairs that,
And if it gets out and it crosses over, then where's it go in the house?
then it would go House Transportation,
And then
House Finance, House Appropriations.
likely.
Does that sound like,
I think so.
Well, okay, so would it behoove us to take a position or not?
I think there were a lot more, I think there were a lot of questions for us to actually take a position, and so I'd like
Like the,
the elected official, the elected jurisdictions to take a look at this. Frankly, if they're gonna, if they're gonna do a fiscal impact statement, they're gonna have to contact you about spaces, because the state's not gonna know that
yeah,
number.
no, I'm not sure we.
I don't think anybody does, which is kind of weird in its own way.
I mean,
Well-
why would we keep track necessarily?
Well, if you don't have a
That's been my
centralized database of how many parking
You
spaces
don't,
we
you
have in
don't,
planning
no.
district 8, but it would be interesting to know, wouldn't
You don't
it?
even know every
So-
business in your district.
That is true.
I do know from my local tax experience, your local commissioner of revenue, real estate assessor, does know the number of parking spaces.
Do they really?
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 Well, this should be a nice trivia
tax
test.
assessment.
Commissioner of the revenue. Reach out to him tomorrow.
He's gonna look at me like, Madam Chair, what? That's what he's gonna do.
You tell me how many parking
Yeah,
spaces
I'm
we
looking
have.
at-
I understand that
I
you
have
know.
to do that. Hey, Bob, I have a question for you.
Wow,
But
this is so
the level
cool.
of detail is there as part of the assessment process for the local real estate tax.
Wow,
Really?
fantastic.
Tracy, you may have said this, and so if you did, I apologize. So say we have a development in Loudoun County that has lots of surface parking.
Mhm.
And I want to do something like it was done in Fairfax County, and by the way, is this also true for governmental agencies?
No, does not apply to public parking spaces.
Okay, so no. So we have the Burlington Coat Factory on Route 7, let's just see if surface parking.
Okay,
So I go in and we build a parking garage and then put homes there. Instead of having the surface parking, we do a parking garage and put more homes there. It's still private, it makes it private.
Mhm.
Our parking spaces and parking garages, is that also be
Yes.
just the same? Okay. Okay. Huh,
Yeah, the way it's defined means any off-street parking facility means any privately owned parking lot, parking area, parking spaces, or other privately owned lot or building made available for parking. So, you know,
we have one for but at our Metro, we have one private garage, we have one public garage.
That's right.
Yeah, one of both.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. Well, this is, you know what? Kudos for him for trying to think outside the box, try to think of something. I don't know how I feel about this yet. I think I want to, yeah, I think there's gonna be a lot of questions to come up. But and you all tell me what you think. I don't think it behooves us to take a position yet until we know more and kind of see where it plays out and see if it even gets out of.
True.
Take a position like one way or the other and it's just some committee that we
So,
put
just
on.
want to- I mean, I guess, again, we'll be seeing him next week, so I'm happy to take a bunch of questions. The question I will ask him is, have you figured out how to run numbers on this?
Yeah.
Because that is the biggest
Yeah.
question that everyone has been asking.
Do you have a thought?
I guess I actually just have a question, like, what about projects which would be able to fall into both categories directly?
Meaning,
Like, it could potentially qualify for 30% funds. And then it would also be able to apply for this program, like how.
Oh, so that'd be some double dipping.
Yeah. the MBTA would have to,
Because
But no, so for 30%, once we certify.
oh, we don't
Yeah,
see
it's
it.
there.
We don't do,
That's
it's
right.
a
Good point.
locality
Thank you.
decision on how to use the money.
So I think that's
Yeah.
gonna be the biggest
Well,
issue.
there is a prohibition, obviously, against funding something from 30% and then getting reimbursed for it from another source, whether it's a federal source. You're not supposed to double dip on any of that.
I just don't think that that's.
You think that?
I think, well, would that be something that NVTA as a
Yes,
policy would
that's-
have to adopt to make sure that doesn't
And
happen?
that's a little different because how do you reimburse, like, if you apply to NVTA, well, number one, we have, and I'm not saying it's the most current list, but we track 30% projects and we're actually putting them in the Nova Gateway.
Okay.
So
Oh, that's
now
right,
we
yeah.
have more of information on
Right.
how the localities are using the 30%. So if we see an application for a bike ped project under this revenue source, now we can cross-check it, but we also ask on the application, do you have other funding sources
Yeah.
on this project? Now, I think to Mr. Longy's point, it gets to, if the answer is yes, and you have 30%, now we're talking about, well, is it for design? Is it right away? And I know we're getting nuance, but you could have another funding source, but on a different
Part of the
phase.
phase of the project. So that'll be a policy discussion NVTA would have to have if
That
this
happens now.
got created. Oh,
That
okay.
happens now. I mean, we actually encourage projects to come with multiple and diverse funding sources. What I was looking at really is we have an MOU or an MOA with each jurisdiction that basically covers, for any type of grant funding, it's kind of a basic thing. You don't submit your expense to two entities for reimbursement. At some point, that becomes.
Yeah. All right, so one more bill, again, more questions than answers on this one. But this has the impact of reducing available operating and capital funds out of the Virginia Mass Transit Fund for Northern Virginia. So let me start. The Virginia Mass Transit Fund provides funding for transit agencies and operators across the Commonwealth. WMATA has a specific designation of how much they get out of the fund. It was capped so that they couldn't take all the money based on the metrics. It's so big, right? I think 2 years ago, Virginia Railroad Express, VRE, went to Department of Rail and Public Transportation, DRPT, and said, the metrics you're using for bus operators doesn't work well for us as an entity. We don't operate that way. We're a commuter rail system. DRPT agreed, so I see your point. And so they negotiated for many months on setting up a specific allocation from the Mass Transit Fund for VRE with their own set of metrics. That ended up being 3.5%, and that got approved. So like WMATA, that comes off the top. This bill comes from the Hampton Roads Transit Commission, Hampton Roads Transit Commission, and they're seeking an off-the-top allocation for their light rail system. So they would take 1% from the operating side of the Mass Transit Fund, and then 1.5% from the capital side, for a total of 2.5 cents. So that's all, again, from a policy perspective is what VRE and Wilmot have done, that makes sense. What we don't know are a couple of things, because VRE, the percentage for VRE equals what they were getting anyway from the mass transit fund. It essentially is they're not getting any more, they're not getting any less. What you've been giving is roughly 3.5% of the mass transit fund. That's how that number was gotten to.
So not a hard number, 2.5% adjusted for inflation.
2.5%, whatever's in the fund.
Yeah, got it.
Right.
So not like the federal funds for Vermont.
Correct.
Okay.
So lots of questions of what is the history of funding going to the light rail system? Is the 2.5% the right number? Is it beyond what they've been getting?
Okay.
Um, and so I don't have a recommendation for a position necessarily until I understand a lot more about what they're asking for. I don't have a lot of history and understanding how the light rail system is paid for, except out of the allocation, I'm assuming that goes to HRT. So this is sitting here.
Does that pot of money kind of get used up every year? Do they have to raise more revenue to?
No, so it's as the mass transit fund, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact percentage, gets X amount of revenue from the Commonwealth Transportation Fund, CTF, goes into the state's Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund. And then there's the WMATA, the VRE, and then it divides into so much is operating, so much is transit. And then you all apply for that. You've got metrics you have to meet, and then that is distributed. Now, the fund is showing some weakness. DRPT briefed the members of the transit, Transit Department, something commission. Sorry, I don't remember what it is, which is some operators. I know NBTC sits on it for us and Jim Dyke does, and was briefing them on sort of what the long-term outlook was for the mass transit fund. And it's starting to be a lot hard. It's becoming harder to meet the request coming from the local operators. And from both capital and operating. So the question is this the time to be sort of taking 2.5% out?
Well, and it's interesting because I don't know why they wouldn't, for lack of a better word, deserve it, just like VRT and WMATA get it. I can't make an argument that they shouldn't. I guess what it would do, it would decrease the amount of money that is available for localities to apply for.
Yes.
That's what it would do.
Yes,
Right.
right, yes.
Significantly, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. So again, another one where we don't have numbers yet.
Okay.
Don't know, haven't heard from HRT sort of how they got to that number. I don't even know yet if VRPT supports this.
Okay.
So that's a question. So I want to put it in front of you all so that you know about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we'll have some questions, because you're right, from a policy perspective, it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
If the metrics for the bus operating
Right.
systems don't really match what you do, then you probably should have a separate, but anyway.
Anybody?
Ms. Mayor, I was just gonna note, so the funding would go to HR TAC, which,
Yes, which is sort of interesting, but.
yeah, that is interesting.
So HR TAC is the equivalent of us
Yeah.
in Hampton Roads. They don't do planning, but they are responsible for distributing their regional transportation.
For
funds.
capital?
For capital, yes. No operating for capital.
Yeah, interesting. You have anything? Mr. Snyder? Mr. Snyder? Dave, you good?
We ought to make sure NBPC is aware of this.
They are, as far as I know, they are.
If we could just make sure that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the people I'm waiting to hear back from, is sort of their analysis of this. And I had someone from VACO give me one of their transportation staff people, like, what do you think about this? And
I mean, I just don't know how anyone could, how we would say, no, like, we get it for our needs, but you can't, I don't know how that happens. Yeah, after all, the Commonwealth, especially since I've been screaming for years that, the Commonwealth should give more to Metro anyway, so I don't know how I would make that case. But yeah, you have to see the numbers, because it would just mean that there's less localities are applying for.
so
Okay.
that's all I have for this meeting.
Wow. Wow, that was. Those two little items were pretty big. Anybody else, anything else, any other concerns? Anything else we should be watching for? Tracy, when are you going down?
I'll go back on Sunday.
But you're going to go.
I'm reading bills as we, up until this meeting, and I'll be reading them for the next couple of days as they pop in,
Well,
so.
listen, I know a senator and a delegate who haven't put anything in yet.
Cause it just got elected, that's right. So it's nice that they have some extra time.
Yeah, it is really nice, although I was feeding them, I was shoving stuff down. One in this, one in this. So I got my stuff in, and I was like, if you hear anything about MBTA, just call me, just call me. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have anything else for the good? No? All right, then, if nothing else, we are adjourned.